An outrageous statement was made today by one of the top advisors of Ukraine's President Zelensky. Mikhail Podoliak has said that the reason that India and China are moving closer to Moscow is simply because they are unable to understand and read the changes that are happening in the world, and that is a result of their low intellectual potential. So I decided I'm going to look and see why China is being accused of having a low intellectual potential. I will leave India for another conversation. It took me about, 2-3 minutes consulting with Western media sources that shows that China does not have a low intellectual potential. In 2019, China has reached the so-called dark side of the moon. And by doing so, it is the first country in the world to reach the far side of the moon. The Soviets, the Chinese, and the Americans and others have landed crafts on the near side of the moon, the one that faces Earth. China is the first to go to the other side of the moon, or the so-called dark side of the moon. It takes a lot of intellectual potential to do so. Number 2, according to Newsweek, reporting on a World Bank report, it says the following. According to the World Bank, China's real per capita GDP rose from $404 in 1979 to $11,560 in 2022. That is basically 5-folds within a period of about 40 years, starting with Deng Xiaoping until Xi Jinping. Now, this is not only unprecedented in modern history, arguably it's unprecedented in the history of economics. China has done it, and they have done it through a sustainable trajectory, which means that it was not a one-time off, but something that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, and a lot of intellectual potential. To put this within a better perspective, I went to the report of the World Bank itself, and it says the following. At China's current national poverty line, the number of poor in China fell by 770 million over the course of the same period, that's of 40 years. Can you imagine the kind of planning that takes to pull 770 million people out of poverty? And by the way, China covers about 3/4 of all the people who have been pulled out of extreme poverty. 3/4 of them come from China alone. It takes a lot of intellectual potential to achieve that, doesn't it? And to a more recent story, Huawei, one of the great technology giants, not only in China but worldwide, has managed to achieve 2 miracles. This is what Quartz magazine says about this. It says that Huawei's latest smartphone, the Mate 60 Pro, offers proof that China's homegrown semiconductor industry is advancing despite the US ban on chips and chip-making technology. So this is kind of 2 miracles in one. Not only they managed to bring to the market something that is extraordinary in its own right in terms of the technological advancement, but also they have done so despite of a hermetic American siege on Chinese technology, or on technology that is being sent to China. Do you need any more proofs? Well, how about this? One final proof that China does not have a low intellectual potential. According to Nature magazine, in 2022, for the first time, the country, meaning China, had the highest share score in the Nature Index for the natural sciences, and by doing that, it surpasses the United States. For decades, especially since World War II, the United States has been the world leading contributor to knowledge, meaning scientific and academic research that directly contributes to knowledge. The world had about 50% and the United States had the remainder. Things have changed, and have changed dramatically. And China is right now #1 contributor to scientific knowledge anywhere in the world. For Mr. Podoliak not to know these things is quite unfortunate. I do suggest that he educates himself about these subjects. Otherwise, he would be repeating old school racism, accusing people from Asia and the global south of not being intellectually developed based on whatever standards he and his European friends have of the rest of us. This was Ramzi Baroud with One Take.